Okay. Well, today I want to talk to you all about the flow of food. And we've been talking about food safety and food temperatures and how to keep food safe and washing our hands and how to make the dishwashing sinks wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry, and all of those different chemicals and processes that we're using to help keep everybody safe. And so here's another part of that is going to be the flow of food. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. I've got a slideshow for us to look at. Okay. And there we go. All right. So this is about the flow of food. And when you think about it, there's a lot of places in the kitchen where things could go wrong. And sometimes it has to do with refrigeration or keeping food cold. I was just walking by just a couple of minutes ago, and that small refrigerator that we're using, that we got things out of the last few days. Well, that thing is brand new. And when I came in this morning, it said 45 degrees. Good or bad?
Bad.
Bad. That's right. What temperature should it say?
40. Isn't it supposed to be 32 or 34?
Keep going.
35, 36?
Oh, come on.
Or
41 or below, remember? If you put it at 32, Jamari, we're going to have ice popsicles in here, right?
Oops.
Yeah, so we don't want to freeze everything. We'd have crispy lettuce and all of that stuff, but we want to keep it.
I mean, it's good frozen. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know about that. It would be very tasty on a hamburger for sure. But 41 is where we want it. And so I've been messing with that all day today, trying to get that situated. I'm getting pretty frustrated with it right now. But those are things that happen out in the world. And just, the longer food sits out of temperature, we know that the clock's ticking on it and it's growing bacteria. And so that's why, and it can just be the craziest of things, it's a brand new refrigerator. It's supposed to be holding the temperature right. And so sometimes it's just a matter that nobody noticed, or something is not working properly, or it could be any number of things, but stuff like that happens. And so it's good to have processes and procedures that your restaurant uses to help keep food safe. And so whenever you are working in a restaurant, a lot of times it'll be somebody's job to monitor temperatures of cold hold and hot hold foods, just for that very reason, because it's easy just to be sailing along in your day and then all of a sudden notice that the temperature on the refrigerator is 5 degrees off. And it might not matter for a little while, but it will over time. It will matter. And so we've got to make sure we're keeping an eye on all of those details. Okay, so the flow of food is the path that food takes through your operation. When you think about it, it's just like when you go to the grocery store at home. You have to go buy it, right? And then you bring it home, and then you have to put it up, right? And then it hangs out until you get ready to cook it. Kind of like that. It's the same deal in a commercial kitchen. So except we're ordering it from what we call a food purveyor, and those are food companies that specialize in food for commercial use, and we buy in large quantities, big cases of food and gigantic cans of food. Okay, and so but we want to make sure whenever we're buying our food that we're buying it from reputable places that have been in business a while, and places that, if we needed something or needed help with something, that we could call them and say, hey, I got a problem here, can you help me? Instead of just nobody, no support, and we don't know what happened. Okay, so we always want to make sure that we buy from a reliable source. Okay. All right, so all those steps we take is to help us protect food. So cross-contamination, you probably heard a lot about this, haven't you? Okay, and so that's just moving around of bacteria or pathogens from one place to another. A lot of times it happens right here, just on our hands, because we're not washing our hands really well. We've been working over here in the dish pit handling dirty dishes, and then someone says, hey, I need help with the salad, and you run over there and start helping to make a salad, and then pretty soon you're helping somebody clean up, so you're sweeping, and then somebody needs help out front, and then you track that all over the kitchen that way. So you have to be really careful with that. So one of the things that we have to remember to do is keep our raw food and our ready to eat food separate. So raw food means things like hamburger patties and things that are going to require us that we need to cook. And the ready to eat food are going to be things that don't require any more cooking, things like buns, for instance, and things like lettuce and things that are already cooked, like a sweet roll, something like that. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those in different areas until we're getting ready to use them. Okay, we want to make sure that we're sanitizing our surfaces and all of our utensils. Okay, so cross-contamination. All right. And yesterday we spent quite a bit of time talking about temperature, right? So can anybody tell me the temperature danger zone? You guys remember what that is? What is it, guys?
41 degrees.
41 to what?
135.
You got it, girl. All right. Thank you, Summer. So 41 to 135. That is right on. So bacteria likes it in that temperature, 41 to 135, because that's the place it thinks it's like a day at the beach, and so it's just having a good old time in that temperature range. Okay, and the longer that food stays in there, the more bacteria it makes. And so if we're a smart food handler, we're going to either keep our food colder than 41 degrees or hotter than 35 degrees. Okay, let's look at the temperatures here. Okay, so let's see. So the thermometers that we used yesterday, those are digital thermometers. So they were pretty easy to use, weren't they? You just push the button and they come on, and you can take the temperature really easily with your food. Remember that hot hold and cold hold temperatures. Hot food needs to be 135 or hotter, and cold food is 41 or below. Only way you're going to know that is with a thermometer. So unless you have some x-ray vision, anybody got superpowers? Okay, so that time and temperature abuse means that either we've tried to keep something at the wrong temperature for too long, or we've kept it past its expiration date, or we've let it set at a temperature that's not appropriate for the food product. Okay, so the biggest thing we can do is train our employees, and we need our employees to know how to use thermometers. We need to know that food has a 4-hour time limit if it's not sitting out, if it's sitting out and we're not temperature controlling it. Our employees also need to know what to do. What do you do if you find something that's out of temperature? Do you have to throw it away? It's kind of expensive if you just have to throw it away, isn't it? What if it was like a whole pan of, let's say, fried chicken? How much do you think that would cost? Anybody bought a bucket of chicken lately? Yeah, Jamie, how much was your bucket of chicken?
I think it was $23.
Yeah, 23 bucks. So I don't know. And a bucket of chicken, do you think one of our big hotel pens, would that hold a couple of buckets, you think?
Take the pen out of here.
Because the air in here is
Good.
hot.
So we're talking about, 40 or 50 bucks that we're throwing away. But what if, do you think there's something we could do if we saw it was out of temperature? What could we do instead of throwing it away?
Freeze it?
Well,
Put it in the
that's,
microwave.
that's a good guess. So what we could do, if it hadn't been more than 4 hours, we could reheat it, right?
Put it in the microwave.
Yeah, we could put it in the oven. We need to get it back up to 165. All reheat, remember, is 165, right? So, but if it hadn't been 4 hours, if we've been keeping track of the time and we just discovered that, we could heat it up to 165 and it'd be fine. We need to make sure our employees know that. Otherwise, they're throwing away 50 bucks worth of chicken. We don't like that, do we? No. So, but we want to make sure our food's safe. So the big thing is, let's don't let our food get out of temperature in the first place, right? Yeah, we got to stay on top of that because it's expensive to throw food away, but we definitely don't want to make people sick. So we have to be really careful with that. So training our employees so they know what to do, what those corrective actions are, that's going to be really important. All right, so here's some things that get us into trouble pretty frequently when we talk about foodborne illness. And you remember foodborne illness, that's food that's made someone sick, right? Okay, so, and one of the biggies is that we didn't cook it to the proper temperature. And yesterday we were kind of talking about a few temperatures. We talked about chicken. Does anybody remember what the appropriate cooking temperature for chicken is, internal temperature wise? Jamari, do you remember?
Yeah. For isn't it 165?
Got it. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Okay. So, yes. So 165 is the proper internal cooking temperature of a chicken.
She can't see it.
Look at that. So, all right. What about hamburger meat? Does anybody know what the proper internal temperature of a hamburger meat should be? Of a hamburger, rather, should be?
Isn't it 150?
Oh, so close. What?
155?
155. Yay. Good job. 155 on hamburger meat. Okay. What about a good old pork chop? What should the internal temperature of pork be?
Isn't that 150?
You're
Or
so
145?
close. You're so close. How about 145?
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. Good work. Okay. So those proper internal cooking temperatures are really important. What about reheat temperature? If you
Everything
if you're gonna reheat,
everything should be at 165.
you got it. 165, no matter what it is, forever till the end of the world is 165. Okay? Is that specific enough? All reheat, no matter what it is, 165. Okay? And some places like McDonald's and Sonic and a lot of the fast food places will cook everything at 165. They're serving hamburgers and
You don't have a water bottle.
you have to do those at 155. They really are cooking them to 165 just to be safe, and then people only have to remember one temperature, right? So that's good. So some places, so that's above and beyond what is required. So as long as they're cooking it to the minimum temperature, everything's good. But a lot of places have additional things that they do to help ensure food safety. Okay, so let's talk about cooling foods properly. So I think I used the example the other day about cooking a big old pot of chili. And if you cook a big old pot of chili and you have some left, You don't want to just throw it away, do you? What do you do with it?
You separate it into little portions and then you put it in the refrigerator.
Well, there you go. So you save it for another day, right? Yeah. So at home, you know, you might let it cool down a little bit and then we stick it in the fridge, right? So in a restaurant, we have a set amount of time that we have a small window of time actually to get stuff cooled down before we put it in the fridge. And if we don't do that fast enough, it starts to grow bacteria and then we get a problem. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So sometimes food that's like a leftover food, if we don't heat that or cool it down and then heat it back up quickly enough, it causes a problem, which brings me to number 3 here, is that reheat. Remember, reheat of all leftovers forever, no matter what it is. 165. Excuse me. And then this bottom one here is the hot hold and cold hold, and that's what we've been talking about with my refrigerator. You know, I said it was like at 45, so that's bad, right? Yeah, so we want that to be 41 or below, and then we want our hot hold, where we're keeping our hot food, 135 or higher. So anything in between there is bad news, so we don't want that. Okay, so these are some things that are pretty commonly getting us into trouble. And so we have someone usually in our restaurant, usually the manager, that is monitoring this and making sure that people are cooking things appropriately, that we're cooling things down like we should, and that all of our equipment's working properly. And so, and then a lot of our quick serve places don't even have leftover foods, and so because they're preparing to order. So some places have just eliminated that altogether. Okay. All right, moving on. So yesterday we worked with thermometers, and so everybody got a chance to use those digital thermometers. And we talked about there's a couple of ways that we make sure that they're accurate. Can anybody tell me one or the other of those 2 ways?
An ice water bucket.
Yes, Bristol, an ice water bucket. And what's the other way?
Boiling water.
You got it, girl. Okay, so we know that water freezes at a constant what? 32, 32 degrees, right? And so we know if we make that ice water slurry that Bristol said, we know that that's going to be 32 degrees. And if we stick our thermometer in there, what temperature should it be? 32. That's right. So if it doesn't say 32, there's something the matter with it. So, but that's how you know it's accurate. And the same deal with boiling water. We know it boils, water boils at 212 degrees. And so if you stick the thermometer in there, it should say 212. And so those are a couple of ways that we can check. So because sometimes you need to check. All right, so this is the flow of food. And this is what happens whenever you are working in a restaurant here. So you're going to purchase your food. And we'll go through these slowly here in a minute. Purchasing, receiving, storing, preparing, cooking, holding, cooling, reheating, and serving. And those are the steps in the flow of food. And we know that things can go amok at any one of those places and make somebody sick. So we've come up with some kind of rules or procedures at each one of those spots that food employees can follow that will help us keep our food safe. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of those today. Okay, so we were talking about purchasing. Remember, that's that first step in the flow of food is purchasing food. Remember, we're going to only purchase from an approved source. Is Grandma in her yummy grape jelly? Is Grandma an approved source?
No.
Sorry, no. We love Grandma, and we love Grandma's grape jelly. And when we're at home, we can have all Grandma's grape jelly we want. But unless grandma is working in a commercial kitchen that's been approved by the health inspector, we cannot sell her jelly in our restaurant establishment, okay? So there are a few variances and things, but you have to get those approved by the health department. For instance, some restaurants have their own salsa and they will package it and sell it. And as long as they have that permission from the health department, there's not a thing in the world wrong with that, but it has to be prepared in an inspected kitchen under the guidelines that they have specified, and their recipe has to be approved. And so it's a bit of a process, but I mean, it can be done, but you can't just like I said, you can't just use grandma's grape jelly. Got to be approved. There are some other things that are kind of different too. There's been in the last few years, there's something called the Home Baking Act. Does anybody know some cake decorators that decorate cakes out of their home? Yeah. So, and and that's perfectly kosher. Everybody can do that. There's, as long as you are, I think there's a dollar amount that you have to stay under. As long as you're doing that, then everything's fine. It has to be, has to be food that, it can't be wet. It has to be cakes, and it can't be some types of different types of filled pies and things like that. So it's limited, but you can do certain things. And so anyway, those would be some approved sources as long as they had their licenses as they should be. All right. So whenever, let's go back to our restaurant scenario then. So let's say we were getting a shipment of groceries on our big Cisco truck, and the Cisco truck's backed up to our receiving dock, and the guy starts unloading boxes. So what do we do then? What do you think? What will we do then? Anybody? So, well, hopefully we have a copy of our order. And so we're going to start checking those in, making sure that the boxes are in good condition, that the cans aren't dented, for instance, and that the grapes aren't mashed and the eggs aren't cracked, right? We don't have a big old rip down the side of our flour sack. So we're going to make sure it's in condition of food like we want it to be, okay? Because it's never going to be any better than the first time we see it. Okay, it's only going to get worse from there. So if it's no good then, it's not going to be better. So you got to make sure that your staff knows how to receive the food, how to inspect it. And then we want to start putting things away right away. Start off with the frozen food. Needs to get checked in, checked over, and put in its appropriate spot immediately. And same thing about the refrigerated goods. All of those things, check them in, make sure they're as they should be, and let's get them put up. And then our dry goods, same deal, okay? Using thermometers, how would you take the temperature of, let's say you know how milk comes in containers like you get at school, how they're those little half pints, you know what I'm talking about? How would you take the temperature of that without opening one up? What would you do?
What?
Don't you just open one?
I was gonna say, wouldn't you use like those censored thermometers?
Oh, summer. Yeah, you could use like an infrared. You could find out what the temperature of the external temperature of the carton. Definitely, you could do that. And you could also put two cartons together and do it that way and put your thermometer in between, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you just don't want to puncture the container that whatever it is in, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. 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 All right. So your packaging, whenever you look at the packaging, you should make sure that it doesn't look like a mouse has been chewing on it. Doesn't have any little mouse poopies in your boxes there. Make sure your cans aren't dented. Okay, so be really careful because whenever you're checking that stuff in, you sign off on that line, and once you sign, you own it. Okay, so make sure it's what you want and it's in the form that it's supposed to be in. Okay. All right, some storage guidelines. So things like, you know, the other day we had made some chicken and we ended up having some extra chicken. And so we put it in a Ziploc bag. Okay. What information do we need on that Ziploc bag before we put it in the refrigerator? Anybody know? Mari?
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry, I was doing something.
I said, what information do you need to have on a package of leftover food before you put it in the refrigerator?
A label and a date.
Okay, so we need to know what it is, and we need to know the day you put it in there. Okay, so we can't just have mystery meat in the refrigerator. Okay, because you know when you come back a few days later, or somebody else is looking in there, this might be chicken, it might be pork, it might have been in here from yesterday, but that could have been last week too. So that's kind of a problem, isn't it? Yeah, sometimes you have that at home, and that's, you know, again, if you do stuff at home, that's your business at home. But whenever we do things in a commercial kitchen with food that is for sale to the public, we have some rules we have to follow, so we're keeping everybody safe. And so anything that has been removed from its original container that doesn't have a date or some type of identifier on it, we have to put one on there. And the way we do it is we just write what it is and the date that we put it in the refrigerator. Okay, and we just write on the packaging with a Sharpie marker, and that's easy. Some places have date stickers and they're color coded by the date, like Monday is yellow and Tuesday is orange and Wednesday is blue. And then you just know the day before that same color comes up, you throw everything away that's not there. So you can keep track of 7 days that way, because food that is out of its original container or food that has been made in-house, like we made homemade potato salad or noodle salad or whatever, we could keep that for 7 days and then we'll have to throw it away. And so it has to be marked so we'll know when that 7th day is. Hopefully we've used it all up, but sometimes we don't. So that 7 days helps keeps us straight. Okay, so food, so anything that goes in the refrigerator that is not in its original container needs the date, the day you put it in there, and identification as to what it is. Okay, anybody know what FIFO is or stock rotation? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Okay, I bet you've seen it before, you just don't realize it.
I know.
Huh? Who says that?
I think I know.
Damari. All right, tell us.
So
What
say
is-
you make some like pasta noodles, and so you say you have some in the refrigerator, then you have some fresh ones. You take the ones in the freezer out, put them in the fridge, put the fresh ones in the freezer, and then take what you need out the refrigerator and put it where you need it.
Okay, so yes, and yes. So it's called stock rotation. And what that means is, if you probably witnessed it if you have been to Walmart when they're restocking the shelves. So have you ever seen the stockers in there and they're putting the cans, they're loading the cans, or they're putting more stuff on the shelf? What they're doing is pulling what's there to the front and putting the new stuff behind. Have you ever watched them do that? And that's called stock rotation, because they're wanting to sell the old stuff first before they sell the new stuff. And that just makes sense, right? So think about Think about when you're going to go to the grocery store and you know, well, I've got a little bit of milk left, but I'm probably going to need some before the next time I go to the grocery store. So you buy a gallon of milk. Well, you still got this part of a gallon of milk that we need to use up, right? Do you bust into the new milk or do you use the old milk?
The old.
And we try to use the old up first, right? You don't want to be wasteful.
Depending on how old it is.
Right, now if it's out of date, it's got to go. But it's still good, you know. Yeah, you try to use up what you have opened first, and that just makes sense. And so that's what FIFO is. FIFO stands for first in, first out. Does that make sense? It's an acronym, first in, first out. Okay. So another thing on guidelines for storage is discarding expired food. And I cannot believe how quickly food gets out of date. You have to be on that all the time. The other day, I started organizing our shelf where we keep our dried food, for instance. And I'm telling you, I had boxes of, I think they were animal crackers, and I don't know what the heck we even made with animal crackers. But I mean, they were like a year and a half out of date. I don't know how that happened. So, I mean, it happens so fast, and it's stuff you think you just bought.
Corona.
Yeah. So you gotta look. You gotta look at that because, I mean, those dates can sneak up on you. But, you know, if you get inspected and you have too many expired foods hanging around, you're going to get in trouble for that. So it's good to keep an eye on things like that. Another thing you can do to help yourself out is to order the less amount of food as possible. You know, you don't ever want to run out of food, but you don't want to have this big surplus either because you have too much stuff hanging around. You know, one, it's starting to go bad, but even things like if you keep it in the freezer, what happens if the power goes out? You've lost all that expensive meat or whatever you have in the freezer, okay? So it's not a good idea just to cram everything full or, you know, or have too much stuff on hand because it's too expensive, okay? So let's see, we talked about all of those things. All right, let's move on to the next section here. Okay, in our refrigerator, you know, we have those 3 shelves in our refrigerator. That top shelf in our refrigerator is for produce or fruits and vegetables, okay, or food that will be what we call ready to eat foods, which means that we're not going to cook them anymore, okay?
RTE.
RTE, that's right. So things like bread, for instance, things like cilantro, things like grapes, oranges, apples, things like that. If we have those in the fridge, they need to be on the top shelf, okay? Because we're not going to, some of those things we might cook, but we aren't going to cook all of that stuff. So we just keep that all on the top shelf. The middle shelf is for dairy products, so things like milk and things like cheese, okay? Those are the things right there in the middle. And then on the bottom shelf is where we keep eggs and meats, okay? And eggs and meats, because eggs, you know, we consider them kind of in that meat group. And then meat, because if we don't want any of that raw meat juice dripping on my cilantro, right? So we got to have that on the bottom, okay? So there's a proper loading protocol for our refrigerator. So if you look at it in there, all the produce is up there, all the dairy is right there, and all the meat and the eggs are right down there. So, and that's by design. All food, where we put it in the refrigerator, has to be covered in some way. You can't just leave half an apple back in there and hope it's going to be good. At home, you know, we can put things in there kind of, you know, covered or not covered, and that's a totally different deal because here we've got so many hands in and out of the refrigerator and things can end up turned over or have something land on top of it, and it's just not a very tidy way to do it. And so things, if the packaging is open, we either need to put what's left over in a Ziploc bag or wrap it up in some plastic wrap, but we can't just leave open packaging and put it in the refrigerator, okay? So we have lots of plastic wrap and Ziplocs here, so if you're not sure what to do, come and ask me and I will show you. Okay, all right, so thawing food properly. So who has ever has got home It's time to cook dinner. I don't have anything thought out. Has that ever happened to you?
Yep.
Gonna make chili tonight and the hamburger meat
All the time.
all the time. I know, it's a thing. So here's what you can do. There's 3 ways that you can help yourself out. And the first way, anybody ever tried to thaw stuff out in the microwave before you start cooking it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that works
Used
good.
to.
Yeah, you can get it pretty thawed pretty fast in the microwave, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you cook the whole hunk of meat. Okay, and you can totally do that. The other thing that you can do is put it in over cool running water, and think about like whenever you get a Coke and
Running water.
you put ice in it, what happens to the ice in your
It
Coke?
dissolves. It makes the Coke cold.
Okay, it starts to melt, doesn't it? Okay,
Mhm.
and that big meat sickle is doing the same thing in that water, that it's starting to melt. Okay, and so it works the same way. So that would be another way you could do it. The other thing is just part of the cooking process. So anybody ever just thumb that hunk of frozen meat in a pot and just start hammering away at it, just trying to get it to soften up so you can brown it?
Yep.
That works too.
Yep.
Yeah. So the smart way, the best way, if we were really thinking about it, we would do it the night before and put it in the refrigerator on the bottom shelf, and it would be pretty thawed by the time we got ready to use it.
Okay, question.
What?
You can't do that with chicken, can you?
Bottom shelf of the refrigerator.
Well, no, I'm talking about cook it while it's frozen.
We did that the other day. I had those frozen chicken breasts and I put them on a sheet pan and we put them in the oven.
Oh, well, that's different. I'm talking about like with a bone.
Oh, like a whole chicken?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, but not because of this. It's because you'd never get it done. I mean, the outside is because it would be so frozen on the inside, like a whole chicken. Yeah, bless you, whoever that was.
Thank you.
That
Thank
you
you. Thank you. Yeah, allergies, man.
So, think like a gigantic turkey, for instance. Yeah, those things you have to have them thawed. So this stuff I'm talking about, like the microwave, those would be smaller, like pound-sized hunks of meat. However, you can thaw a turkey under this water like this. Okay, so anyway, but it takes, it probably take in the refrigerator. It might take 3 days to thaw a turkey because it's like a 20-pound bird. So, I mean, that kind of takes a while. So, but yeah, you would, Jamar, you're right on that you wouldn't be able to get it done fast enough before it was all dried out.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, all right, moving on here. So remember those temperatures we were talking about yesterday, food temperatures? So I need you guys to memorize. There's 3 of them. Can you do that for me? So what's the internal temperature of cooked chicken supposed to be, guys?
165.
165. So I need you to know that, okay? What's the internal temperature of a hamburger supposed to be?
155.
155. I need you to know that. Hamburger meat, 155, okay? And a good old pork chop.
145.
45. So pork, 145, okay? The other temperature I need you to know is reheat temperature. What temperature did I tell you reheat was?
165.
165 forever till the end of the world, no matter what kind of food it is. Reheat is always 165.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. What temperature is cold hold?
41 degrees.
41 degrees. What temperature is hot hold?
140, 150,
135.
135. That's right. Okay. If you can remember those temperatures, we will get along just fine. That's all I need you. Those are the temperatures that we work with the most. And if you know those, you will not have any trouble. Okay. Have those,
Okay.
memorize those for the test, and you will be doing great. Okay? And there is PS in your book. I think there is like a little block, a little square that has all those temperatures in it. But this slideshow is also in your Moodle. Okay. But if you need me to print something off, like if you want something to look at, I've got some stuff I can print off too that has this on here. So, but you can remind me if you need that help. Okay. All
Jamari
right.
has a situation.
Jamari, what?
Has a situation.
What?
Okay, so I kind of forgot how to upload my stuff to Moodle, and so the chapter 6, the 10 questions, that's the only thing I didn't get.
Okay. So, are you using a Chromebook and Google
Yes.
Docs? You're using your
Garbage.
Google Docs?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So if you're saving your stuff in Google Docs, you will, when you have your document open in Google Docs, on the
Mhm.
left, there's a little button that says File,
Oh, and then I got
and then
you.
you go down to Download, and
Mhm.
then you have to download it as a Microsoft Word PDF.
Okay, because I put share, and it wouldn't give me the option to do that.
Do it that way. You got to go File,
Download Microsoft
download
PDF.
Microsoft PDF, and then you can move that folder over to that blue arrow that's going up and down. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. If you have trouble, let's talk about it. So I think Madeline was kind of in the same boat, right? And so, did you get it to go, Madeline? No.
Is she in our class?
Yes. Yeah, she just hasn't been here yet, but she's coming pretty soon.
Oh.
Okay, Madeline, we'll keep working on yours though. We'll get it going. Okay, don't worry. All right, Jamari. So you try it, Jamari, and you see if that works. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. If you have trouble, you call me.
All right.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about holding foods for a minute. So this is, anybody ever eaten at like Golden Corral or Hometown Buffet or some type of a buffet restaurant where you can just get all kinds of good stuff? All right. So that's what this is. These are pictures of big old buffet salad bar, and then here's their hot bar over here. Okay. So cold hold out here, these are designed excuse me, to keep food cold. And this refrigerated panel here will keep this food 41 or below, as long as the food is below the lip of this refrigerator here. If we had food that was kind of piled up here, that food would not be 41 degrees. It would be warmer than that, because that's food that equipment is not designed to keep that food cold if it's heaped up like that. Okay, same deal over here with the hot food. This particular hot hold is designed to keep food warm that is down in these wells. Okay, if food, see how this bowl or whatever that is sticking up out of the top of that, that is not 135 degrees or warmer. Okay, because there's no way, because it's above that line, and this equipment is not designed to do that. So if you get inspected, the health inspector is going to go around and they're going to check the temperature of this stuff, and your stuff on your salad bar better be 41 degrees or lower. One time I remember we had just made some ranch salad dressing and put it out on the line, and it was like at 50 degrees or something like that. Well, is that 41 or below? No. And we had just made it, and the ingredients had just come out of the refrigerator, but it had been long enough that those ingredients had warmed up. And remember how we talked about with our burritos yesterday, how quickly that happened, right? So guess what happened to us? We got written up for that. It's not good. So don't do that. So make sure everything you put out there is 41 or below. You're responsible for it. Same deal over here, 135 or warmer. Okay. All right, moving on then. So for holding food, remember that if you're checking the temperature, most places on a big buffet like that, they have a person that is it's their job to check the food, and they do it every so many minutes, usually on the hour, and they're out there checking it. And they have a form that they write it down on, or they're doing it some type of digital version of it. But there's a record of the fried chicken on Wednesday at 2:49. It was 138 degrees. Okay. And so what we do then is we know that for the time we've had that food out, we know what temperature it was. So somebody comes to us and says, your food made me sick. And I had the fried chicken. Well, you can pull out your records and say, well, we had that. We got it from this supplier. We cooked it this long. It was at this temperature for this amount of time. We kept it for this, and then we discarded it or whatever. So you have a record of what happened to that food. And so it's a way to protect yourself, and it's just a good business practice to have. Okay. Some other things to protect food. Anybody ever wonder why there's a sneeze guard or that plastic that's over like the salad bars and the buffets that you go to? Isn't that annoying? Because you almost always bang your head on it when you're trying to reach over and get the mashed potatoes or whatever it is. But the thing is there by design, and it's there to keep you from getting stuff in the food, or people from breathing on the food, or coughing on the food, or sneezing on the food. Okay, and so. And Corona, yeah, we don't even have buffets anymore right now, but they'll be back. So, but our food code says all food must be protected. Okay, and things on a buffet, the way it's protected is by that sneeze guard. Another way we protect it is there's almost always a sign on that buffet that says "Get a clean plate." Remember seeing those? Yeah. So, things like anybody ever get a donut out of the cabinet at like Walmart or something, and they have those little papers or those deli papers where you, like, it's a self-serve thing where you can get out one? Yeah, so that's kind of protecting, depending on, because not everybody does that, right? They just stick their hand in there and get one. So anyway, so that's some rules. Remember hot hold, remember cold hold. Yeah, I think that's about it on this slide. All right, so cooling food down. So remember that big old pot of chili that we were talking about? Like Jamari said a while ago, we're going to break it up to smaller quantities, right?
Yep.
Okay. There's a couple other things that we can do too. We can break it up into smaller quantities. Here at school, we have a gigantic ice machine, and so those containers where we've broken it down, we could actually put a bunch of ice and some water in the bus tub, and then set that container down in that ice and water, and that would definitely speed up the cool down process. So you can do that.
Called blast chilling.
Yeah. So some restaurants have what we call a blast chiller. And they're like a souped up refrigerator, and what it does is just blows cold air over the food. You kind of have it in those smaller, shallow dishes, and it will cool things down really fast. And so that's a way that you could cool food down. And then the last one is a cold paddle. Anybody ever seen a cold paddle before? So those are they kind of look like a weird looking baseball bat, kind of like. And there's a lid on the top of it, and you just fill it up with water and put it in the freezer. And then you can stick that down in your hot pot of chili or whatever, and it won't dilute the food because the ice isn't loose in there, but it will cool it down in a hurry. And so those things work really cool. And so there's several ways that we can get food cooled down quickly so that we're not growing too much bacteria, and we can make food in quantity so we can keep up. So there's a lot of reasons why we have to do it, but we have to do it safely. Okay, so which brings me to the process of that. Okay, so the process is called two-stage cooling. You guys ever heard of that before?
No.
Sorry, getting choked. Okay, so right here, this should say 135, but we said 140. We just kind of rounded it off. But this two-stage cooling process is the best way to cool food, okay? So we're going to go from 135 to 70, and that's what that's sitting out on the counter in our ice bath or in smaller containers. And then once we get it to 70, it's safe to put it in the refrigerator. Okay, we don't want to put food that's hotter than 70 in the refrigerator for 2 reasons. One,
Ooh.
it heats up the refrigerator, right, Jamari? What were you going to say?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, it heats up the refrigerator. And so, which also means that it heats up everything else that's in your refrigerator, right?
And then bacteria grows.
Right, and there's that. And the other thing is your equipment, because your equipment's having to work harder too to cool things down faster, right? So it's just smarter to ice it, have it set down on the counter till it's 70. And once it hits 70, then you can put it in the fridge and it can finish cooling down to 41 or below if your refrigerator is working properly, like mine isn't. But anyway, we'll work on that. So 41 degrees, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's your 2-stage cooling. So that'd be really good test question, by the way. All right, moving on here. Okay, reheating food. What temperature did I say reheat was?
165.
Forever till the end of the world, no matter what kind of food it is, it's going to be 165, right?
Yep.
That is right. So, and we have to do that pretty quickly too, because you remember you think about leftover food. So when you cook the chili first time, it went through the temperature danger zone from the raw meat till we got it hot, right?
Yeah.
And then our leftovers, after we had it hot, we let it cool down. So it went through the temperature danger zone again, right? Till we got it cooled down to put in the fridge. And when we're going to reheat, guess what? It's going to go through that temperature danger zone again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only get 1 reheat with leftovers.
Oh, I thought it was only 2.
1. Uno.
Oh.
Okay? 1 reheat. 1 reheat. So a lot of places will only, with leftover stuff, they will only use part of it, or they'll do it to order, they'll do chili to order and just do a bowl at a time, because whenever the whole thing's reheated, you have to throw it all away.
Yeah, that's what we do with lasagna.
Yeah. So just do it to order.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but once it's cooked, then it can't just keep going up and down through that temperature danger zone. Okay. So on leftovers, 1 reheat on that. Okay. And reheats what temperature?
165.
Got it. Woohoo. Okay. All right. So here's some things when you talk about servers that are working in the front of the house. They can do a lot of things to help us too. And they need to have a little bit of training so they know what they're doing with the dishware and the silverware and that kind of stuff. One of the things is whenever you hand somebody a cup or a glass, you need to handle it by the bottom third. Okay, you want to put your hand where people don't put their hand. Okay, so the bottom third is where you'll handle glasses. Things like silverware, you'd hold it by the handle and not the business end. Okay, and as much as possible, when you're handling silverware and glasses and stuff, if you can wear gloves, that's a good thing, or have at least washed your hands, because things like plates and cups, those are considered food contact surfaces. And even though they're not food, they could affect food, because if we introduce bacteria to that, it can be on there. Okay, so washing our hands, you can't wash them too much. Okay, the other thing is we don't put dishcloths or dish towels on our dishes. Okay, because those dish towels have been all over the kitchen. They've been on the floor. Someone's used them to wipe out the booth and the fly that was in the window, and pop somebody else in the hiney with it, and they've just been everywhere. And so we definitely don't want to use that to wipe on our nice clean dishes. Okay, and we don't want to use it as a hot pad to bring out dishes to the table to serve up. Okay, that really is not a good thing. Okay, all right, moving on here. So this is some stuff that gets people in trouble sometimes. So whenever you are clearing off the table, there's a few things that you can reuse. but there's a lot of stuff that you can't reuse. So things like ketchup, for instance. If it's in the little blister packs, the little that you tear open, as long as it's still sealed, you can reuse those. Those can be collected and given out again. Things like salad dressing come like that now. Anything that's in a sealed package is just fine. Crackers come like that, so there's nothing wrong with that. Things that you can't reuse would be like hot rolls, for instance. If they were in a basket that was in a napkin that was on the table, you can't reuse those. So once they hit the table, if they're unwrapped like that, they have to go in the trash. Okay. The fabric or the towel or the napkin that was in that basket has to be laundered or trashed too. You can't reuse those. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, tablecloths. This is something else. Tablecloths, if you have sitting at a table with a tablecloth, those have to be changed every time you turn the table or every time there's a new customer. Or sometimes you'll see the table has a glass top on top with the tablecloth. And as long as they're cleaning that glass top and then they're removing that tablecloth every time it gets dirty, then they can do that as long as they have the glass top on it. So anyway, that's your reserve. And okay, and then food trucks. So this is kind of has really taken off in the last few years, and there's lots of people that this is really the thing. And I think personally, if I was going to open up a restaurant, this is what I would do, because for several reasons. One is that you can do it when you want to do it, and you can take it where the people are, and it only takes 2 or 3 people to run one very well, and so you don't have a lot of overhead with a building and utilities and all of that. So what do you think, Jamari?
I love working on a food truck.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And the thing about it is, they're pretty self-contained. I mean, they have their own water. You have a place to wash your hands. It has its own power source. So, and ideally, it's going to have equipment in it that's capable of maintaining proper food temperatures, like a refrigerator and some type of a hot hold. And so, so all of those things, and that's what they're looking for whenever you are trying to get a license, for instance, for a food truck. You got to check off all those things, don't you?
Yeah.
And so, and getting started is expensive, but once you kind of get rolling, it's an all right deal. Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking about, we'll probably talk a little bit about it tomorrow, but something called HACCP. Okay. And HACCP, we were talking about the flow of food, and each of the your places, your food places, are going to have a plan for how we're going to care for the food. And at each one of those stops through the flow of food, there's things that could happen to the food. And so with HACCP, it helps us make a plan. What are we going to do if, Madeline takes the temperature of the fried chicken and it's at 120 degrees? Is she going to throw it away? Are we going to reheat it? You have to
Put it in the oven.
Yeah, we have to know what the plan is. And you have to train people because people don't know. And one person might say you have to throw it away. One person says, no, you can reheat it. One person says, well, we just won't do anything. We'll just leave it like it is. And so if you don't train your employees, you're going to get all kinds of answers. And so HACCP is about coming up with procedures so people know what to do. And then after that, it's about monitoring it so that we know that things are being done properly. And so we'll talk about that probably tomorrow. But just so you know, HACCP was developed by NASA, the space travel NASA, and it was developed as a way to keep the astronauts safe from foodborne illness in space. And it worked so well that it kind of trickled down to the industry in food service. And so we use a lot of those same ideas and principles now just to keep everybody safe. So kind of interesting little tidbit of history there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. So that is our lesson for the day. So does anybody have any questions or anything they want to talk about or no?
No.
Can't think of anything. Okay, well, this is good. Well, some of you guys I'm going to see tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'll see you
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep. Well, some of you guys I'll see tomorrow, and some of you guys it'll be next week, won't it? So anyway, well, I hope you have a good rest of your day today. And if you're having any trouble with anything Moodle or Zoom or getting onto any of the classes or uploading, if you will please talk to me, I will do my best to help you. Madeline, I'm going to stay on here for a little bit, and since we can kind of share screen, maybe we can come up with, okay? Okay. All right. So if anybody else needs a little tutorial on how to upload using your Chromebook, I'm going to see what I can do. I don't have a Chromebook though, so mine's going to look a little bit different, but maybe Madeline can kind of, I'll allow dual screen sharing. So maybe Madeline can kind of share hers and we can figure it out, okay? But if you don't need help like that or don't need anything else from me, you are free to go. And I will see you at your next scheduled meeting time, okay?
All right.
Bye, Miss
Bye.
P.
That's
Wait, question.
Later.
okay. Bye, everybody. So I'm going to stay on here though if you need help.
Question.
I'll be the last one to leave.
I have a question.